going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review, and this is our weekly-ish show where we review the Magic stories. And this time we are here for what is essentially the finale of the Dominaria United stories with Episode 5, A Whisper in the Wind by Langley Hyde. So yes, this is the 5th and final main story, as well as the 10th and final of all of the Dominaria United stories. My quick review at the top of this one is, I don't love what occurred in the story. We've talked about that many times, but I don't think that made the story bad. I just didn't enjoy it because of its outcome. So if you want to find out what happened and you want to know comprehensively as opposed to just the two big beats of like who the sleeper agent was and who the sleeper agent killed, which you could just get from looking at the cards, then you should probably read this one. And I don't think you'll have a bad time doing so if you already know the big beats and, I don't know, aren't upset by them, I suppose.
Right.
That's just me.
Okay, I mean, I think it's interesting because I thought too that I was going to hate this story because of what was going to happen in this story, but it wasn't bad. You know, I didn't love it. I'm not like gung-ho about it, but it was good.
Yeah, I genuinely feel almost word for word the exact same way. So if that does anything for you, if that means that you haven't read the story but you're okay with doing so now because you know that you probably won't be crushed by it reading it, whatever the case may be. If you have not read the story yet, if you want to remind yourself of the story because you already have, but it's been a bit, the top link in the description down below will take you to this story. Feel free to go click on that link and read it for yourself. We are #not sponsored by Wizards to ask you to go read it. It's just the stories are important. You should go read them to support them and continue to, you know, we can give constructive criticism, but if no one's reading them, it's gonna change one way or another, either to change or to just straight up go away forever. And that's not ideal. Although, you know, we can complain about different aspects of like, we don't like when they do this, or we don't like when they don't do this, or something like that, but getting rid of it forever is not the appropriate solution, so. Yeah,
I think everyone agrees on that, as long as they don't work at Wizards. If
so,
they do, sometimes they agree with that.
So yeah, and then of course, if you do go to read that story, we would love it if you would then come back here and join us in the discussion. Any thoughts that you might have on this story, things that we discuss, whether you agree, whether you disagree, things that we don't discuss, we want to hear from you in the comments down below. Keep the conversation going. It is super important. I'm going to try to get through this part quickly, but before we get onto the full review itself, hi, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. If you're enjoying the things that we're doing, please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so that you get notifications whenever any of our videos come out on this channel. We have two other channels, Video Games for All and Gluten Free for All. Links down in the description box below as well. And we are live on this channel every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Mondays, we play MTG Arena. Almost certainly whatever the newest limited format is, that's what we're doing. We would love to have you join us on either of our nights that we stream live. But if you're a fan of Magic, that would be the night for you. And if you're interested in video games in general, that's what we do on Fridays. This Friday, we will be continuing our new playthrough of Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem, which is our spooky month stream for Halloween times. We started a little early because the game's going to take a little bit longer to finish, but we had a blast with the first episode. You can check that out on Video Games for All, link in the description, like I said.
Very interesting.
Yes, exactly. And genuinely one of my favorite video games of all time. So if that's something that you're interested in checking out, if you've never heard of it before, it is for the GameCube. It is a horror game. So yeah, we would love it if you would come and join us and give us your thoughts, your opinions, etc. On the game as well. But that's the end of that. On to the full review itself here. Episode 5, I mean, spoilers, I guess. I slipped once In the 9 previous JaARs to this one, I slipped 1 time. And I noticed it as I said it, and I was like, I'm just going to leave it there and not make a big deal out of it. But we tried our best to be spoiler-free for folks who were only following along with the stories and or only following along with our JaARs. But we're going to be spoiler-full in this one. So if you haven't read the story and you want to know before we talk about it, go. Because
I think there was a moment where I really gave something away, too.
no, I think we didn't air that, if I recall.
Oh, okay.
If I recall correctly, that was in a cut that we were able to cut out.
Good.
I think. But there was one time where I just like blatantly mentioned who the sleeper agent was, casually, as if everyone knew. And I was like, ah, damn it. Anyway, so this story, I would actually say, to talk in the positive column for the story was very fast-paced and action-oriented.
Yes.
Right? Which...
They put a lot in the story without it feeling super crammed full of shit.
Yeah, actually, I'll agree with that, because that's a pitfall that some of the final stories have definitely fallen into.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll agree with that, for sure. There wasn't a lot of time for Danitha and Radha and Miria, for example.
Right.
Like, they were kind of, when they were mentioned, they were all mentioned together, and that was the only time they were ever mentioned.
Right.
So, okay, I suppose. And we did not see the Weatherlight crew at all, because they were kind of stranded, but we saw the Weatherlight. We just didn't see the crew. So that was interesting to me as well, that we missed out on them entirely. That, I talked about it last week, or in the last episode, so definitely go check that out if you missed it, where we talked about braids. Or no, I guess it was 2 episodes ago. But where we talked about braids and the Weatherlight and the Weatherlight being completed, etc., where I said that, those were characters that, while we didn't love the last Dominaria set's stories, because they weren't great, these are characters that people probably enjoy in, Arvad and Tiana and Shauna and etc. And they got nothing in these stories, just nothing at all. Shauna was not reprinted, but got another printing of a card as a mythic, and she did very little. So that was disappointing. That's not this story, but it is in that their absence was noted when all these other groups are coming together and now Joda and Miria come save the day, and now the Golden Argosy with Danitha and Radha come save the day. Now Daragaz and his dragons come save the day. With all of those different groups coming in and trying to be that big moment of Cap on your left, right, from Marvel, because we've said it before, and I'll say it again, I'm sure, Magic is trying to be Marvel because, not to take anything away from them, Marvel makes a lot of money. And so if Wizards is looking at that and going, I want money, I guess it makes sense, but at the same time, you're not the same property, so stop. But if you can't think of anything on your own, you might as well just copy the thing that's successful, I suppose.
Boo.
I'm not the first person to make that comparison, but I'm also not, this is not the first time that we have made that comparison.
No.
We made that comparison years ago, so you can go check out other JaARs where we've talked about it. I'm just going to continue it here, but yeah, there's those big moments of now this person comes in and saves the day, now this group, and blah blah blah. So I don't know, there was that moment, and I guess maybe, you talked about it not feeling rushed. There were, I think, little moments here and there that felt a little rushed.
Okay.
The Weatherlight
Yeah.
is just gone, but it flew off fighting against Daragaz, and when they were winding down from the fight at the end, we heard nothing about that anymore. And I guess you could say that because we were just with Teferi and Joda and Joyra, that they weren't really focused on other things outside of the spot that they were in. So if the Weatherlight and Daragaz and the other dragons flew off and were fighting or whatever, that that wouldn't be something that those 3 characters were really focused on, because they kind of can't care about that right now because they're a little busy, preoccupied with other things.
A little bit.
A little bit. Just a scotch. But like, so but I felt like a lot of the stuff with the Weatherlight was very abbreviated, especially when it seems to me that with stuff like the Silex and Karn and etc., it seemed like the Phyrexians were trying to gather together parts of the legacy weapon.
Right.
Which would make perfect sense since it was the thing that was used to take them out the last time. So, sure, maybe you just want to destroy it, but it, to me, seemed like they were trying to gather it to use it for themselves. But then the Silex gets destroyed, and the Weatherlight has been completed, but, like, is being fought, so, like, we don't know where that is, and Salvation's still out there, but with Squee, so it's still up in the air, but as the story ended with Elish Norn saying, like, it's everything.
Yeah. I feel like that's like a typical trope, though, of like, oh, well, you know, the important thing that's in this property in order to defeat the bad guys is gonna get stolen by the bad guys.
Sure.
And then the bad guys will use it in their best interest.
It's the MacGuffin.
But then in the end, the good guys will get it back and be able to fix everything. Mm-hmm. So I think, like, to avoid that stupidness, they were just like, Silex, crush.
Except that they already discussed ways of making a new one.
Yeah.
Right? So, who knows? But still. I did think it was interesting when all these different groups are coming in, that even for the Phyrexians, right? They had the Sea of Phyrexians, then a Dreadnought comes out, they beat the Dreadnought, then the Weatherlight comes in that the good guys think it's there to help them, and it's not, and Urtai comes down. Not for nothing. I mean, for named characters that are helping the Phyrexians, we didn't see Rona at all in this story, but we did see Urtai, and Urtai got a fair bit of screen time, if you will, in these stories. I mean, this one, yeah, but in all of them. I mean, overall, in Dominaria United stories, he was in Squee's story, he was in the last main story, number 4, episode 4, where he was fighting whichever group he came and showed up and fought with. He was in earlier stories as well. So, like, he was here multiple times. They used him a fair bit. And Ajani is the one who knocked him off.
Oh, yeah. If
you remember, like, when Ajani shows back up, right? Urtai's there. Then Ajani comes in to save the day, and Ajani jumps in and knocks him off. And, in fact, so I wrote this down. Let's talk about it now. Ajani is the sleeper agent. If you saw the leak from the book, you knew this way long ago. You also know that he kills Jaya way long ago. If not, this story came out the day that they revealed the secret that he was the sleeper agent. So if you avoided it until that point, but didn't get to read the story until after the big reveal stream, because, you know, God forbid you were working or something at a regular 9 to 5 here in the United States where the company is releasing this information. No, that'd be stupid. Doesn't everybody just sit around and wait for wizards to make announcements? Yeah. You would have had it spoiled for you then. And if not that, but you still didn't get a chance to read the stories, then the cards would have spoiled it for you in Ajani's sleeper agent or Extinguish the Light and Jaya's body falling through the air at common. Like a removal spell at common. I wonder if we're ever going to see those. Anyway, but I thought it was interesting that they allowed Ajani to be the one to come down and knock Urtai off.
Okay. Because
it is what gave Karn the ability to trust Ajani enough. And I guess I was a little frustrated because, like, when it happened, the first person that Karn tells where the Silex is, after all this time of, I don't trust you, I don't trust you, I don't trust you, I'm not telling any of you, I'm telling you all the wrong information of where it is, so that I can check up on you and see. The first person that he tells exactly where the Silex is, or, like, generally where the Silex is is Ajani, the sleeper agent. The first person he tells.
Yeah.
And yet, so like Amy and I both were like, because we knew going in that Ajani was the sleeper agent. It hadn't been revealed in the story yet, but we knew.
Right, and we knew that Karn didn't know, right? Yet, like you said, he had already spent a lot of time checking up on everybody and being like, I don't trust you, I'm gonna lie to you about where it is, and all this stuff is like a test. And then in this one, he just, because shit is slightly starting to hit the fan, because at that point it really hadn't even yet.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's just like, Ajani, the Silex is at Jaya's office. Or studio, or whatever the fuck it is.
He said workshop, but regardless.
Same thing.
Exactly.
And it's like, okay.
But,
sure.
realize how frustrated we were by that because of how BS, because at that point we knew how the rest of the story was going to go, right? And yet, not for nothing, it didn't go that way. Not exactly.
Right.
Instead, Jaya is the one that goes in to get it, because then Jaya is the second person that Karn tells where it is, and Jaya goes and gets it. I guess because Jaya is the one to go and get it, and Ajani doesn't reveal himself until after Karn has removed all the protective measures, that's why. Because otherwise, I had it in my head of like, oh, okay. So, because Karn jumps down and knocks away Urtai, who is genuinely killing Karn. Right. I mean, like, plucking his limbs off, killing him.
Right.
So Urtai gets knocked away by Ajani. Karn now trusts Ajani implicitly because why wouldn't a Phyrexian sleeper agent want Karn to just die? Karn now trusts him implicitly and tells him where it is. And again, as the first person you tell, and yet that had no bearing on the Silex being found, Ajani having it, or Ajani revealing himself. Right. None. So that moment of I guess people knowing that it was Ajani and then being like surprised that, or upset that Karn would tell him, amounted to nothing.
Right.
So it was a moment for us where we were like, son of a bitch. And yet at the same time, it mattered not one iota to the story. Like if that had not occurred, the rest of the story could have still happened with no difference whatsoever to it at all.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because Ajani was still standing right there when the Silex came out of the box and into Jaya's hand so that Ajani could transform and reveal himself and etc. It didn't matter.
I was rolling my eyes that whole time too. Ugh, how annoying was that? Was like, oh, it's too heavy for me. All of a sudden I'm a weakling.
Well, I bought that, I guess, because like, I don't know, because Karn like panicked and covered it with more metal, which we've talked about this in other stories from Dominaria United, and I'm not gonna bring it up this time, because I am. Okay. Karn in the first story, like end of the first story, beginning of the second story, can't planeswalk away because he's surrounded by too much Phyrexian metal or whatever. And so he can't focus enough to planeswalk away. Urtai is ripping him apart limb from limb, and he doesn't think to planeswalk away, but he still is able to use his magic to reach into the Blind Eternities to get a metal to put around a box that's far away from him, which he literally says he's never done before and takes a lot of effort. Just leave, dude, and then come back.
Right.
If it takes all that effort to do that, then just go away and then return. And return and like surprise Urtai and crush his head between your hands or something.
Right.
Like I like that didn't make sense to me. Yeah. And then Jaya dies, right? We know this. Ajani kills Jaya, and when Ajani kills Jaya or is walking forward to kill Jaya, Teferi is right there. And just like Joda in the stories past, Teferi's doing a million things left and right. No sign of exhaustion whatsoever on this man until Jaya is about to die. And then Karn's like, oh, Teferi's too tired. Why? Why is he all of a sudden too tired? Because he was slowing Ajani's attack, which did nothing, by the way, because Ajani had already attacked Jaya and was still able to attack Karn, if I recall. I don't remember the exact order there. Jaya was attacked once with the axe. Karn was attacked once with the axe. And Jaya was thrown off, like grabbed and thrown off the edge. All three of those things occurred. I believe it was in that order, but I could be wrong. You're welcome to correct me in the comments down below. I would appreciate it. But all three of those things did occur. Mm-hmm. And Teferi was slowing Ajani's attacks with his time powers. In what way?
Yeah.
Because Jaya still got hit the first time. Karn still got hit, and Jaya still got killed. So in what universe did Teferi do a single thing at all to help his friend, who, again, I am in no way... The blind eternities. I'm in no way going to diminish the loss or the grief, right? That's not what I'm trying to do here. But realize how upset he was when she was dead. That should indicate to you how close they are. If you're that close, literally later on in the story, it says something about Teferi where, like, Teferi is able to muster... Oh, it's to go talk to Joda. So it's not exactly the same thing, like, I get that, but Teferi, like, it says, like, Teferi is not willing to do anything right now, but for the sake of Nyambi, because it's what Nyambi would do, he musters up the courage that he doesn't even think he has any left to be able to go over and talk to Joda. You literally could have changed courage to, like, strength and magic to be able to save Jaya in any capacity at all, dude. Like, anything at all. No? Okay, I guess not. We'll put you in a time machine, it's fine. You can use that, though. Because Saheeli's here for some reason.
Magically appeared.
Yep. You wanted to talk this line. I don't know if you want me to read it or you want to read it, but go for it.
So at one point, who's saying this? Urtai? Yeah, so Urtai is talking to Karn.
And I think the she in this scenario is the Weatherlight, by the way. Because they were talking about the Weatherlight in this moment. So unless they're talking about...
they're talking about Jaya.
Jaya, who made the Weatherlight? Because they're talking about the Weatherlight. But go ahead, regardless, sorry.
Yeah, I thought they were talking about Jaya because
again, if I'm wrong,
Karn's very close friend.
If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments.
And he says, she may think you're special, Karn, but I know the truth. Anything that has been built can be disassembled. And I was like, okay. Firstly, yes, anything that can be built can also be disassembled.
Yep, that would be how it works, yeah.
But why does that make it less special? Many things that have been built are very special. Very, very special. And the fact that they can be disassembled and possibly improved upon is one of the things that makes them special, right? And he should know that, being a Phyrexian now, he was disassembled and put back together and improved upon in his own mind. So, is he not special for that?
I mean, he probably thinks he's quite special. I mean, that's just how he operates.
Yeah, it seems like he does think that. He is special. Everyone is special.
In their own
especially
special way.
Karn and anything that was built is special because it was built. Somebody took the time and the effort and the skill and the materials to make something. And so it's special, right? And then like I said, it can be taken apart, made into other things. It can be improved upon. It can be destroyed. And that that lack of it being something that exists forever in exactly the same state is part of what makes it special, right?
Okay.
And that goes for people as well as things that people have built, and it goes for nature, and it goes for anything, right?
Okay.
It's finite. Everything is. And I would argue that things that are very finite are more special, and things that are very lasting are more special, right?
Sure.
Maybe the things in the middle are a little more mundane.
Okay.
Right? But in any case, they're all special, and they all have a lifespan. I've said that a million times, and I'll say it a million times more.
Sure.
Everything has a lifespan, right?
Sure.
But I think it's really cool that he said that, because it just reminds you, it's just another level of how he is evil in a more intelligent way than what you typically see as, evil behavior, right?
Right.
In stories where it's just I did a bad thing. He said a thing that was hurtful and would be to anyone. And I think he said it to the person that it would hurt the most, in Karn. And so that, arguably, this almost more inert kind of saying that he said in this is actually more proof of him being evil than the things you would expect an evil character to say,
Sure.
that are sort of portrayed as being a deep cut. This is less of a deep cut, or masquerading as less of a deep cut, when in reality, when you look at it, it's the deepest cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, there was a moment where you had Jaya, and to go off of what you were saying, sorry, not Jaya. I didn't even write this down, but there was that moment where, again, kind of almost word for word from the last time, Teferi again apologizes to Karn in this story for how he treated him in the past.
Right.
And it's this again? Is this going to go anywhere? No, not even a little bit? Okay. I guess you can just repeat the thing that you did.
Yeah.
There was no reason for that to be there.
Yeah,
it was just something for the two of them to talk about until they could be told, oh, guys, we gotta go, there's a problem.
Right.
So
it was small talk, so
yeah.
Did you see the game last night?
Yeah. God. I had that, I've told this story, but I had that small talk conversation once. That's very awkward. Anyway, so I don't know. I don't see the point of having that in there. It was already in the story once before, and it kind of felt out of place there too.
Right. So I kind of felt when they mentioned it again in this story that we were actually going to see a resolution to that.
Don't be ridiculous.
But yeah, you're right. Don't be ridiculous, because why would there be a resolution of any kind? Because then you can't guarantee that there'll be some sort of random story beat that everyone's going to forget about by the time you write the next story.
Yeah.
For you to pull out your butt and say, hey, this was relevant.
So while we're in a bit of a negative space, let's talk about Jaya. So
hold on for 1 second. I just want to say, not that Teferi's mistreatment of Karn is irrelevant.
No.
Because it's not.
No.
But the way that they wrote it in both of these stories was irrelevant.
Yeah,
because they didn't take it anywhere.
Yeah.
They didn't say, here's the real reason behind why he's apologizing for this now. Mm-hmm. And, here's character development that happened to get to this point. It was just, well, I'm making this declarative statement, that I guess they were saying because they realized that they should.
Well, yeah,
I don't know.
It was basically the discussion of it in that moment was unearned.
Yeah.
There was no reason for it to have occurred there, as opposed to anywhere else, and or at all.
Right.
Like there was nothing that really seemed to prompt it, and so it was something that they wanted to include in the story, and so they shoehorned it in twice,
Right.
because they wanted it to exist. Because people did hone in on multiple moments of Karn kind of talking about the fact that, or like the story talking about the fact that like Urza was a bit of a dick, and
Right.
and that there are still people who read the stories or play Magic who consider Urza to be like a great man and a great character, and older Vorthos who understand that the things that Urza did are not things to be celebrated. I've been trying for many years to be like, hey, could we not like just be like, oh yeah, Urza's great. When are we going to see more Urza? Let's do it. It's like let's be aware. You can enjoy a character who is bad, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Like I can say I'm looking forward to seeing Ob Nixilis again without you saying, wow, Joe, you really think that all the things Ob Nixilis did were great? No, but I like the character of Ob Nixilis and the way that Ob Nixilis can be sort of manipulative and shitty. Like I find that interesting. People can like villains, but if you're not acknowledging that even if they are working towards good ends, if they're doing it in a bad way, you should still acknowledge the fact that they're doing it in a bad way, as opposed to just blanketly praising them for the fact that the ends justified the means, because they didn't.
Well, I find this interesting, especially that you're using the word great, because, I mean, in history, there were no great men that didn't do something that made them a villain to somebody, right? Mm-hmm. And so, especially people having the title of great.
I knew you were going to go there.
It means they were powerful. It doesn't mean that they did good things.
Yeah.
That's not what that means.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, I get it. I fully get it.
But yeah, it's important to understand, like, the things that they did that were terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But it also, I think, is important to understand the reason behind why they did things that were terrible. Because it's not always the type of thing where somebody's sitting there with, like, a crown on their head and saying, like, I'm gonna do this terrible thing because it sounds like fun. You know,
Yeah.
There's responsibility that comes with having that kind of power, and there's a lot of variables in the world, and there are a lot of misleading people and information sources and all kinds of things
Sure.
that can affect their ability to make great decisions and whatever, you know. And maybe in that moment they said, well, this outweighs this, but, you know, the rest of us can look in hindsight and be like, are you kidding me? But yeah, I do think it's important to not condone shitty behavior. But everybody does shitty behavior sometimes, unfortunately, and that's the thing. And so we need to take responsibility for that. I don't know if Urza did, but he's...
If he took responsibility? Yeah,
he's, you know, bodiless at this point, so, I mean, it caught up with him, at least.
Very high up. Like right around here is where it caught up with him. Let's, while we're talking about people doing bad things, we've talked about, it's funny, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, well, we've talked about this already. because we haven't been spoiling things, I don't think we've talked about this on JaAR yet, but we've talked about it a million times on our streams, Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern. We concur with a lot of the discussions that have been had, and people were saying it a lot with Jaya, more than we were saying it with Jaya, but I was saying it a lot with Ajani. Both of those characters, for better or worse, or one way or another, right? Because we're not saying that Ajani is beyond saving, or to help out Amy a bit. We're not saying that Ajani is beyond salvation. Did you like it? Damn it. Anyway,
yes, when you watch this video back and see my face, you will recognize that I liked it a lot.
Good, I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, not that Ajani is dead, but that Ajani and Jaya were both victims of the story team and or the writers not understanding the characters they had before them. It's like, oh, Jaya's in a mentor role? What do we do with that? She's an old lady. How can she be relatable to anybody? You know what mentors do really well? Die and give people motivation. So we'll just kill her. And then Ajani. How do we write Ajani? Well, it doesn't matter. We don't have to write Ajani. He's a big muscular lion. So he's going to be strong. And he's going to fight a lot. Because that's what he does, right? Ajani is big and strong and he fights. He's not known for being a pacifist as a white planeswalker. That would be ridiculous. Look at him. He's big and strong. That would be so silly to have that character be a pacifist. Why would he be a pacifist? Oh, you mean that's the whole point of his story? Oh, we didn't understand that. He's evil now. Okay, sure. I guess he was standing there before the peace talks. We talked about this in an earlier video of JaAR. He was standing there during the peace talks. Dude's a pacifist. Do you want him there during the peace? No, you just put him inside like a house cat. You just shut him in the other room and like, we'll be in here talking, you go in there. You're clearly not going to be useful to this. That's not why you're in this story. You're in this story because you're going to turn evil later. It's just so infuriating. You don't know the character that you have in front of you. And again, my prediction has always been that they're doing this at this point, hopefully, right? My fingers are crossed. That they're doing this at this point right now, Tamiyo and Ajani, right? So that both of these characters that are currently completed, if and when they become no longer completed and are back to assessing the damage from what they have done, they're going to need to reevaluate themselves a lot. Yeah. Now, I hope that is not a way for the writers to be like, they're totally different people now. So when we write them differently, it won't matter, right?
The characterization won't be wrong.
Because they're different now. It's like
right?
Liliana all over again. We just make her whatever we want.
Right.
I'm hoping that it's actually a chance for them to be introspective and do what you think Ajani would do, which is find out that he murdered Jaya and fully and completely blame himself, hate himself, feel like he's a failure, and need to be brought out of that by the people that he has been helping and giving advice to for all this time. The Elspeths, the Chandras of the world. Will that happen? I don't know. I hope so. Because that's how it should happen if we're at this point. It shouldn't have gotten to this point.
Wow.
But since we're at this point, that's what should happen. But currently, I can't really have a lot of faith in that since they didn't understand him enough to have him be anything in this story but big and strong and a traitor. In that order.
Yeah.
His signature growl they talked about in this story. Dude is a pacifist.
Yeah,
He's a cat. You don't describe him as having a purr or a gentle, calming tone as a pacifist? No, he's got a signature growl that then becomes mechanical. Okay, I guess. Big, strong, muscles. That's his character. He's got muscles, I see them. He's big, strong, big.
He has an axe, though, Joe.
He does. It's a sick axe, too.
And armor, so clearly he fights a lot.
Clearly. That's all he does.
Yep.
Pacifists. That's the definition of a pacifist. They fight a lot.
Yep.
I know that.
Yep.
Come on, that'd be stupid.
Yep.
As with anything that we ever talk about, right? Not just things that we specifically ask about, but if you feel like you understand why Ajani was characterized the way he was, right? If you think that that was true Ajani characterization, please tell me. I want to know. Because if I'm missing something, that's fine. But for people who have not watched JaAR in a long time, Amy's favorite planeswalker is...
Nessa.
And Joe's favorite planeswalker is...
Ajani.
So, you didn't, if I recall correctly, you didn't love Nissa in Zendikar Rising, right? Is that correct? Or at least like how they're using her now, kind of a thing?
Well, yeah, because they're just basically like...
Writing her off and making Vivian the head character, because it's harder to write for a character that's reserved, so you're just going to make the badass green female planeswalker be the one that you use because it's easier to have her be badass than to actually have to like focus up a little bit on what you're writing and like give Nissa a little bit of complexity as your main green planeswalker. Regardless, that's a different story for a different time, but so yeah, you're just going to have another White Walker be the one to pay for the sins of bad writing. Like, it just sucks. Jaya as a mentor has to die because you need the other people to be motivated enough to kill the beings that the entire plane just inherently knows are bad.
Right.
So you
don't actually need that motivation.
Nope. But, you got to have that selling point. A character dies. Somebody gets completed. Let's make it Ajani. Okay, fine. I guess. So, that was frustrating. I hated it. But, like I said, because we hadn't really talked about it on JaAR, I wanted to make sure that it got discussed. Because I feel like it needed to be said here, as opposed to just on our streams. Which, again, you want to come talk to us about story on our streams?
Yeah.
Bring it. We would love to do that.
100%.
Okay. Let's do Joe's nitpick corner next, shall we? A nice way to come down for a moment.
Oh, yeah.
From that part of the discussion. Just a nitpick. Talking about Shieldred. Quote from the story. Her small humanoid half popping itself off its massive dragon engine host. Right? So when she comes down and comes down to where Karn and Ajani are, she like pops out of the big dragon engine thing that on her card art is like her slithering back like miles and miles and miles behind where she physically is. So she comes out of that thing and gets down onto the mana rig and is average-ish size at this point, it seems. But then can you really... Her small humanoid half, popping itself off its massive dragon engine host. Small versus massive. And yet, what's the word that they use to describe it? Half. Her small half coming off of her massive other half? Is that how halves work?
Yeah. For sure, Joe.
Again, Joe's nitpick corner. It doesn't take anything away from the story.
Massive, tiny
I'm just like, what the fuck? Her small humanoid half comes off her massive dragon engine half. Does it though? Is it half though? Yes. It's, again, I am a guy who loves wrestling. I've worn many wrestling shirts on this show and on this series going way, way back. There is a famous line from the wrestler Triple H, if you're familiar, talking to the wrestler CM Punk. And again, these guys are off the cuff, not with like curated stories that you can have somebody read over and tell you, how is that half? Anyway, Triple H talking to CM Punk, I might not get it word for word, but says to him, I'm going to kick your skinny, fat ass.
Yep.
But again, dude is off the cuff on live television, not in pre-written form where you could just hit the backspace button and it doesn't say half anymore. It says part, same number of letters, same word count. No? Okay, anyway. That's Joe's Nitpick Corner. Thanks for coming. Next.
I thought you were going to say the kick your leg out of your leg.
That was another one. That's a very good one. That's Owen Hart talking to Bret Hart. And Owen Hart says to Bret, that's why you're down there with a hurt leg, and that's why I kicked your leg out of your leg. He could not think of the right word to say, and just said leg again.
Yeah. A lot of legs. He's very leggy.
Inside of
Very
other
leggy
legs,
man.
apparently. Kicked his leg out of his leg.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes,
It's a
that happens
Russian
too.
doll of legs.
But I was talking about the fact that it's like kind of oxymoronic, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're like skinny fat ass, like small half, and the other half is massive half. Like, doesn't make sense. Anyway, there is towards the end of the story a genuinely cute moment of Joda and Teferi and Jaya kind of mourning Jaya. At the memorial that they made, they left space for Karn to be able to insert his memories into one section of this, these like pyramids, so that she can be remembered in that way. And Teferi even says, like, Shiv will be a pilgrimage. You can come to Shiv to like learn about one of the saviors of Dominaria. Which, again, really cool.
Very
The memories that they put forth, the discussion that they're having is very sweet. Really nice. What I didn't love was that they seemingly found Jaya's body amongst the detritus after the fight.
Despite that they never said that.
But we don't see any of that. The only thing we see is that Joda has a piece of her hair, which at the time that came up, I'm like, how does he have a piece of her hair?
Right.
Where would he have picked up a piece of her hair? But then later on, Teferi mentions, the story mentions when Teferi is present, that Jaya had the paperwork in her pockets for Karn Silex. And so when she was thrown off, she still had the papers, which they obviously went to get from her body, which they obviously found, but they don't tell you that,
Right.
and you don't see that.
Right. She also had a will in the other pocket.
Yes. A perfect sphere that had a video message in it for if I die, I want you all to know, so that it can be like a tearjerker moment. Anyway,
I love you 9,000 or whatever.
3,000. 9,000 is Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah. It's a high power level to love somebody.
Yes, big time. A couple of last things. The picture, the art for the completed Weatherlight has two dragons fighting the Weatherlight. To me, they look like generic dragons. So when I read the part of the story where it was Daragaz fighting the completed Weatherlight, I'm like, where the hell is that story spotlight card? Hello? Can I have that, please? And then I was like, I guess there are dragons fighting the Weatherlight, so they think that they gave it to us, but like, if it doesn't read as Daragaz, it's not as special to me. If it's like generic Dragon 1 and generic Dragon 2 fighting the completed Weatherlight, I don't care as much. I want it to be Daragaz. Now, if you are welcome to tell me, if that is Daragaz in that art, I don't see it, but let me know. Let me know in the comments. I'd appreciate it. And then, unless you have more to say, we close out the story with Teferi, now with Saheeli, in the time machine, which will take us to Brothers War, which you knew it had to be some kind of time shenanigans, because otherwise how would we be going back to an old story?
Right.
And then Karn shows back up after having gone through the planar bridge, which we were reminded of how that works because Karn felt the intense heat as it passed over him, and we learned from Urabrask on New Capenna that it burns to do that. And a lot of Urabrask's fleshy bits were burned away, and Urabrask needed to heal from that transportation through the planar bridge, because technically only inorganic matter can be transported with the planar bridge. So if you're Phyrexian, right, part Phyrexian, it means you're part machine, so like your machine parts will be fine, but your humanoid parts won't. So anyway, Karn feels the heat, but otherwise is fine, because he is, while imbued with a soul and or a spark, he is still inorganic, and so can transport through. Somehow Shieldred and Ajani do as well, but we don't see them on the other side. So we don't know how affected or not affected they are. We see Elish Norn. And so Elish Norn and Karn ending it out with like the really like uncool, like it's the start of everything. It's like, oh, okay, thanks, I guess. It's a little weird, right? But fine. I don't need like a big, like, ominous thing to end it. It's just that it felt like that's what they were trying to do, and I feel like it missed the mark a bit. But.
Yeah, for sure. You kind of glazed over the whole fairy leaving
I thought
time machine thing.
Yeah, I thought we talked about it before. Go for it, please.
So stupid. I was like, okay, so they just have a time machine kind of out of nowhere now. Saheeli Rai shows up out of nowhere. Would she get like a text message saying, hey, on this other plane, feel like coming by?
So I'll say,
bring a time machine with you.
I'll say that it's unclear with the jump from the fight to mourning Jaya and making the memorial to her, and from the memorial and mourning her to Teferi and Saheeli with the time machine, it's super unclear how much time has passed. Because yes, after that we immediately go to Karn and Elish Norn, which means that was immediately after.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that those other two scenes were immediately after, because they would have needed time to find Jaya's body, get all those things, make the memorial. Then there's more time after that for Teferi and Saheeli to go off and get to that other place. So who knows if somebody planeswalked to where Saheeli was, talked to her, planeswalked back with her. Like, there's no way to know. And it's just, she's here now, deal with it. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't talk about that enough for us to know. There was almost certainly stuff going on in the interim that we were not privy to, because, again, a bit of what you talked about with the fact that this story would have been that much longer. And I think I agree fully with you that I think that this story was a good length, and it didn't feel like there was a lot of this story that was lost by trying to rush through it. I think the story overall was definitely that way. Overall. But that's just the world that we live in now with 5 main stories, is that you're not... almost every story has felt like we've missed things, or could have stayed longer than we did, but...
could have had things explained more.
But then you'd have to pay your authors for more stories.
Yes.
So...
And you'd have to give them health care. Oh no.
That's not true. You don't have to give them health care. They're on a contract basis. You just don't give them health care.
That's the point. They wouldn't be on contract.
Gotcha.
They would be actual employees.
Gotcha.
So you'd have to give them health care.
Yeah. Yeah. Who wants to do that? Nobody needs health care. Sorry, we're getting away from the point here. That is going to be the end of this particular video. I did say...
Just salt coming out of every pore.
I did say in the past...
Very salty.
And I meant it. I think... we're going to try our best, of course. Timing being what it is. We're going to try our best to have more JaARs coming out in the next couple of weeks, but then we will have to wait until new stories come out after that. But I know we want to do the Planeswalkers Guide because we always do. It's super important. And for this story especially, or these sets of stories, right, that because they talk about such older stuff that occurred, we had to do so much research of looking things up earlier on to help us understand things. Maybe the Planeswalkers Guide would have helped us with that. There's also the Legends article that I really want to dive into, so we can talk about these legends a little bit more, so we can maybe hear more about the Weatherlight crew and what they're up to these days. Who knows? Whatever the case may be. And then, like I said, then we might have to wait until more stories are released for you all to see us again. So we're probably going to move back to literally once a week JaAR. Again, schedules permitting, otherwise we will have other things in their places. But stay tuned to the channel. Like I said, the best way to keep track of what's going on with us is to subscribe and ring that bell so that you get those notifications whenever any of our videos come out, including more JaARs in the coming weeks for whatever we happen to be talking about. If there is an article that you feel is Vorthos related and you want us to look at it, let us know. I can't promise anything, but it's good for us to know what y'all might be interested in seeing. And hey, reading a story where we feel like a character was misunderstood, misrepresented, whatever, and mistreated, but still reading it because we want to know if they're going to remedy it, how they're going to remedy it, and or what the fate of this character is going to be going forward, for better or worse, is a really great way for all of you to join us as we show off our
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
We'll be back for more, like I said, scheduling permitted in the coming weeks. Definitely stay tuned. Please don't forget, I mentioned earlier, Video Games for All, Gluten Free for All, links down in the description box below. Video Games for All, 3 new videos a week over on Video Games for All. Right now, the series that we're doing, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney every Sunday, Pokemon Sapphire every Tuesday, and Banjo-Kazooie every Wednesday. All of these games, Amy seeing them for the first time ever, playing through them basically fully blind. I coach her a little bit as we can going through. Hilarity ensues, confusion ensues. You should definitely check it out. It's an absolute blast. And then Gluten Free for All, 1 video a month over on Gluten Free for All. Gluten-free food reviews, snack reviews, etc., and gluten-free cooking, and whenever possible, almost always, lactose-free as well in those foods. So definitely stay tuned for more of those as well. Subbing, ringing the bell, all those places, super important. Thank you for doing it. We really appreciate it. But for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I've been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.